In some cases, we can debate how much these games mean, but we can't debate the football today. It was outstanding. We can't debate how hard these teams play, how these players put it on the line, and we cannot debate the entertainment value. And if you don't get the entertainment value out of it, then you don't like football. Appreciate you being here, the voice of college football on Championship Saturday. This is what we wait for all year long to determine who will win these conferences and who will march on to the college football playoff. What a day, what a night across the landscape of college football. Appreciate you being here. Of course, we will be here for at least 1 hour. And as you can see there on the screen, if you would like us to continue, then we appreciate your consideration. All right, we will take your calls. Let me give my thoughts first. So we've got a number of callers on the line, so we want to get to those calls as soon as possible. And again, we appreciate your support in many ways. Please hit the like button, and that's an easy thing to do. Please hit the like button and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. And also, Christmas shopping, folks. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Please use the Amazon link when you shop on Amazon. It's the same shopping experience. It's the one way that you can contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. We saw in the most important game of the late windows, certainly, we saw a walk-off field goal by the Clemson Tigers. And we can say that Dabo Swinney needs to get into the transfer portal. We can say the Clemson football has plateaued. The one thing we can also say is that Clemson football still owns the ACC. 8 ACC championships in the last 10 years for Dabo Swinney and Clemson. They are 8-0 in ACC championship games. It was not pretty. They were not the better team in the second half. However, when given an opportunity, they put a kickoff returner back there, Adam Randall, who's not returning kickoffs, but their number one guy got hurt. So Randall's back there. He brings the ball out close to midfield. Greg McElroy drew up the play, and basically Cade Klubnik did exactly what McElroy anticipated in regards to getting a square-in pass with 9 seconds left on the clock. Then they trot out there with some of the most horrendous special teams plays in the kicking game over the last 2 years by Clemson. Clemson place kicking has been deplorable the last couple of years, probably cost them an ACC championship last year, with even Florida State going 13-0 in the regular season. Clemson would have beaten Florida State with a competent walk-on scholarship place kicker. Had more problems with that this year, but they bring in this Nathan Hauser. Well, that's the way his name's spelled. They pronounce it Hooser. Nathan Hooser hits from 56 at the gun. Clemson's off to the college football playoff at 10-3. Is Clemson one of the 12 best teams in the country? I don't think so. Is Clemson going to the college football playoff? Yes. Did they earn it? Yes, they did. They won the ACC championship. All right. We also have the Big Ten championship game. And of course, this was all about who wants to proclaim themselves the best in the Big Ten, who will be the official Big Ten champion, who will be the number one seed in the college football playoff. And Oregon went wire to wire this season. So we give all sorts of accolades and credit to the Oregon Ducks winning over Penn State 45-37, an extremely entertaining game, a game that looked at times in the first half like Oregon would run away with it. I thought that was a distinct possibility. I picked Oregon to win the football game and also clear the spread. I thought the spread was going to be more like 8 or 9 points in this game. Maybe it should have been. It appears so, but you got to credit Penn State for hanging in there. When Penn State committed itself to running the football with Nick Singleton and especially Katron Allen, that's when they were the better football team, but they did that far too late in the football game when they were down by 1 to 2 scores. Again, give Oregon the credit. They're a complete football team. They look like the best team in America. They look like the best team in America, but in our new playoff format, don't be necessarily enormously surprised if there's a team that goes number 1 and goes 13-0, the only undefeated team that could possibly lose their first playoff game. I'm not saying that I'm predicting it right now. I don't even know who they're going to play. I'm just saying that Oregon will be playing a team that is certainly capable of beating them in their first playoff game. But they could also contend for a national championship. Certainly, right now, they look like the best team. And then briefly, we'll go to earlier in the day. Texas dominated Georgia for the entire first half, had more than 200 yards of total offense, plus over the Georgia total in the first half. Carson Beck gets hurt down the stretch. Gunnar Stockton tries to throw the game away, even though he acquitted himself rather well based on his inexperience. But Trevor Etienne was exceptional. Nate Frazier running the football, the Georgia offensive line. The secondary made some tremendous plays against Quinn Ewers, and Georgia wins in overtime over Texas, 22-19. So Georgia will have a bye and will be the number 2 seed. We pretty much set it up for you. And of course, earlier in the day, it seems like an eon ago, Arizona State just annihilated Iowa State. And I was most impressed with Arizona State. I expected that to be an extremely good football game. And considering that Arizona State has a wide receiver in Jordan Tyson, who had 75 catches, and their next most productive wide receiver, Xavier Guillory, 17 catches this year, and Tyson was out. So they lost 90% of their production at wide receiver and won the game easily. Arizona State was clearly the better team. They blew out Iowa State. I didn't think there was a team in the Big 12 that could beat another team in the Big 12 by 26 points. And Arizona State deserved and earned that Big 12 championship. All right, let's get to it here at the Voice of College Football. We'd love to be here all night with you. We will leave that up to you. Otherwise, I will produce some videos on these games. But for right now, I am yours. So here we go. Let's hear from you. The real MVPs on the line.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
Hey, DeReal.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So, Mark, I got to ask you the ultimate question. Who's at SMU or Alabama, and why?
Well, Alabama's a better football team with a better resume. Wow. I should have anticipated this, although I've really not thought about it. I think Alabama's a better team, but SMU should be selected for the playoff.
Okay, and what's the differentiation there between the two categories?
Well, the different categories are that I think a lot of teams are better football teams than other football teams, but don't necessarily have they earned it. I think South Carolina might be a better football team. Actually, I do think they're a better team than SMU. However, considering going into this weekend, SMU is number 8 in the country. They didn't do enough negative on the field or show us enough negative to drop all the way to number 12.
I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a legitimate case for Alabama considering SMU has not beaten a single ranked team all year.
Of course there is. They've also not lost to bad football teams. So
that's correct. Alabama's highs are higher than SMU's, but their lows are lower. But I do believe, in just my personal opinion, Oklahoma and even Vanderbilt to an extent is not what their record says they are. They are 6-6 football teams, but if they were in a lesser conference like the ACC and the Big 12, their record would be better.
We believe so.
Right. I understand that. How impressive was Arizona State? They looked like a legitimate football team. I know they only won by 26, but that game could have been 35-45 point win.
Sure. I think if Arizona State plays as well as they did today, that they could compete against somebody that they would have to play in the first round. I don't know that they can play like that every time that they step on the field, but the way they played today, and I understand they were only playing Iowa State, but there's not that much separation that if Arizona State plays that well, there will be a competitive first round game.
Okay. How surprised are you that at the end of the season, Boise State is most likely the 3 seed in the bracket?
Oh, I'm extremely surprised, not based on what's happened the last few weeks, but if you took me all the way back to August, absolutely, I'm surprised. And it's a really good debate there as well, because you can't compare Boise State's schedule top to bottom with a Big 12 schedule with Arizona State's schedule. But when you look at the losses and see that Boise State, again, the loss gets better and better and better as it ages versus what Arizona State and how they lost 2 games to Texas Tech and to Cincinnati. And then Arizona State only beat 2 teams, well, before today with winning records, but now they got a win against Iowa State. They also beat BYU, so 2 10-2 teams. But the team that Boise State beat twice, including in the championship game, is roughly as good based on the committee's own rankings, as good as the best Arizona State wins. Then I can understand Boise State maintaining that lead and becoming the 3 seed. We set this up all week. The 10 seed beats the 20 seed by 2 touchdowns. The 15 seed beats the 16 seed by 4 touchdowns. Which is a more impressive win? And is the 15 seed a more impressive win to the extent that they're able to supersede those 5 spots in the rankings?
I do not believe that should be the case. If that is the case, then this committee, in my opinion, has recency bias to an extreme degree.
Do you not believe it should be the case based on their own rankings or based on who you believe is the better football team?
Their own rankings.
Okay.
I believe Boise State shouldn't even be in the discussion for a bye. I believe Clemson has a better resume than them. I believe Arizona State has a better resume than them because Power 4 conference teams are just better than Group of 5 conference teams. Group of Conference 5 teams went 11-80 against the Power 4 this year. And even if Boise State, let's say, somehow looked incredible, I would still have trepidation, but I would understand it. Boise State, over the last few weeks, has just been skating by against bad football teams like Wyoming and Nevada. So, in my opinion, performance on the football field has to matter to some degree.
Yeah. I don't think it's all just about wins and losses. It would be if we had an objective system, but we don't. And if we had a smaller number of teams to compare, just like if it was a professional sport, then it would be all just about wins and losses. And it would be the rare situation every 10 years in which point differential would come into it. But we have to compare the teams based on the performance on the field. And yes, Boise State should take a hit for not performing well against really bad football teams.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And I do not believe the committee watches nearly as much Boise State football as the other games. That's just my opinion based on the way these rankings. I think they're just like Notre Dame. They're just defaulted in, and they're just moving up under the radar. Mark, who's the 5 seed? Is it Texas, Notre Dame, or Penn State?
The 5 seed, I believe, should be Texas.
Will they be the 5 seed?
I don't know how, if you're the number 2 team in the country, and Notre Dame is what going into this? The 4? The 5?
The 4.
The 4. They're the 4. Texas is the 2. And you play an overtime game in the SEC championship game, how that warrants, because I do understand, and I think that we have a legitimate issue here with these conference championship games. And I am not going to take one side or the other because I think it needs to be much more nuanced. That for the people that say we are ignoring conference championship games, we are ignoring the result. Well, the result is not being ignored on the winning side. Those are determining playoff positions and seedings, and in some cases, whether teams actually make the playoff. So how can the negative side or the losing side of that performance be ignored? That doesn't make any sense. But I do understand why are these teams putting their season on the line when other teams who did not achieve as much, at least from that perspective in that way get to sit at home and protect their resumes. So I do understand that, but we cannot ignore what we see in a championship situation with another data point, and not just another data point, one of the most important or one of the most meaningful, not because it's a championship game, but because you're playing one of the best teams on your schedule, if not the best team on your schedule in this championship game. Therefore, we cannot ignore the performance. And the performance for me was that Texas going to overtime in a rematch against Georgia is more impressive than Notre Dame sitting on their asses on a couch all afternoon.
I completely concur. And first off, I'd like to say we got a lot of people in here, so if people could hit the like button to support this and support Mark, I think he would greatly appreciate that. With that in mind, Mark, Penn State or Ohio State, which one should be ranked higher?
Woo! Well, Penn State actually did play a good game. They played a really good game, but Oregon was generally in control. So it wasn't a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oregon got a lead. They kept the lead. They never did not have the lead in this game. So my points for Ohio State being ranked ahead of Penn State would be, and again, we're getting back to this, Penn State would be penalized to a certain extent for this conference championship game loss because they were ranked ahead of Ohio State and had one less loss going into the game. However, this provides a very meaningful data point. Ohio State finished 10-2. Penn State finished 11-2. To me, that's the same record. It's not that important that there was one other game played. There are three important, and the most important data points in this is, number one, Ohio State beat Penn State. It was a close game in some respects. In other respects, if you watch the game, Ohio State controlled the game. They outgained Penn State by 150 yards. They were the far superior team on the day, decidedly, and they won on the road in Happy Valley. Point number one. Point number two, Ohio State goes out to Oregon, and although Penn State's performance against Oregon was credible, I don't want to call it impressive. I'll call it credible that they showed that they're a legit team. They trailed the entire game. They were never seriously threatening Oregon. They made a run at it. It was one of those kind of games, and it was played in Indianapolis. Ohio State, of course, lost 32-31. They were in field goal range. They called timeout too late, 1 second left. There was a push-off, pass interference, We could go through the whole thing. Basically, the game was almost a tie, and by some people's calculations, because it was on the road, you could almost in a Vegas sort of way call it an Ohio State win. But what can't be debated is Ohio State played better against Oregon than Penn State did against Oregon. That can't be debated. Point number two for Ohio State. And point number three, that the other best team in the conference is Indiana, and Ohio State played them and beat them by 23 points, and Penn State does not have another win like that. Ohio State over Penn State.
Okay, I see some comments I want to respond to, including a super chat, Mark. But Moose is saying that the Power 4 conference champions are guaranteed the auto bids. Is that the case, Mark?
No. No, they are not. No, the five highest ranked conference champions are guaranteed to be in the playoff. And then the four highest ranked conference champions are guaranteed to have the buys and the seeds 1 through 4. We have all just assumed that those would be the power conference champions.
That is an incorrect assumption we have made.
Yes.
Because Boise State will, barring some unexplainable event by the committee, will be one of those 4 teams.
Our Oregon Ducks friend says here, and thank you so much for the contribution, Alabama is the only team to not score a touchdown on Oklahoma this season. He might be right. Maybe, maybe not. I don't think Temple did. Anyway, and lost by 21. Also got outplayed and lost to Vandy. The real joke. So again, we're isolating 2 games. Again, it should be a consideration of the entire season and evaluation of the entire season. 12 games played, not 2 games. Also, there are all sorts of teams out there, including SMU, that didn't beat the likes of Georgia and LSU and South Carolina and somebody else I'm missing, Missouri. Those are four wins that are all better than SMU's best win.
I completely agree, which is why I find this SMU versus Alabama debate to be fascinating. Ward Manuel, how much do you think he would regret that comment of we're not going to punish conference championships if Alabama makes the playoffs?
Well, yeah, he's the spokesperson for the committee. So if he cannot represent the committee, then they have some real problems, because he obviously goes out there with his talking points and they know what those are going to be going into their little session with Reese Davis. So yeah, he has misstepped a number of times in regards to really not understanding how easily his words can come back to bite him.
Are you shocked that the same guy that's had off the field issues with his department and programs that he's run is this guy?
It's just fascinating to me that in a sport like other sports that is so paranoid in most cases about its image and portraying the best image and actually making decisions that aren't the best decisions, but because they want to make the right PR move, would make the move that they made to make Ward Manuel, whose football program is still under investigation by the NCAA, as the committee chair. It's like there are a zillion other people that are as qualified, if not more.
Final question I'll have for you, Mark. Do you believe James Franklin or Ryan Day will get fired this season?
James Franklin's not going to get fired. Ryan Day could get fired.
Because with this loss, James Franklin is now 1-15 against top 5 teams at the time they play.
Yeah, he's also coaching at Penn State, and while they have high standards, they're not firing him for going 11-1 and going to the Big Ten championship game, even if they lose their first playoff game.
Okay.
They're not going to buy him out. No, he'll be back.
Anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you. I'm looking forward to Alabama being in the playoff and winning the national championship. Have a good one.
The real MVP made a call there. Alabama to win the national championship, not just make the playoff. We appreciate that, the real MVP. And Daniel, thank you so much for encouraging everyone to hit the like button. And you see right there, and shame on me, I need to do a better job of highlighting our members here at the Voice of College Football. And I will do that. It's been on my to-do list for a long, long time. And I will start to give those fine folks recognition. But Daniel's been a member here for 19 months. Daniel, thank you so much for your support. And you can become a member here at the Voice of College Football. It's right there on the front page of our YouTube channel. And then Oregon Ducks is coming back with this one. Alabama would have 4 losses if they played today. Alabama would have 4 losses if they played today. Okay. That's an incomplete premise right there. Western Kentucky, didn't they play this weekend? Yeah, they played in a conference championship. I don't think Alabama would have lost to them. Actually, they played Western Kentucky this year, didn't they? I think they won 63-0. So we cannot guarantee that anyone who makes assumptions about teams as good as Alabama losing for sure against anyone, I'm not going to call anyone a name, is mistaken. They are mistaken. Yes. If Alabama is good enough to beat Georgia, they're good enough to beat the other teams that they beat, LSU by 4 touchdowns, and beat South Carolina, then they are good enough to beat whomever on a given day. So they would not necessarily have 4 losses if they played today. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. Okay. We got Rob showing up tonight. Rob, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, what an awesome night of college football, huh?
Yeah,
I tell you what, man. I mean, I was surprised that Arizona State blew Iowa State out like that,
me too.
but I did expect them to win, and mostly because Cam Scatterbo is an absolute beast. I love that guy. I've been watching him, especially the last few weeks. Yeah, and he had like 200 something yards from scrimmage today, 3 touchdowns. Although I will say that after the game, he basically he did a Heisman pose during the game, and he was questioned about it. He's like talking about how he's the best running back in the nation, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't go that far. Let's let's pump the brakes, Ken. You're awesome, but the best, nah. I think a Mr. Ginty has something to say about that, but he's certainly great.
Yeah, I don't think he's anywhere close to the best running back in the nation, but that's fine. He performed. So on one hand, there's a thought out there that if you perform that well, then you can run your mouth. I would rather not have people run their mouths like that, but that's fine. That's like there's an adage that comes from the good book that basically says, allow other people to praise you. If you're truly that great, then other people will notice and praise you. But that's fine.
Right. But he is fun to watch. That is for sure. But
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, I was watching that Clemson game, and I thought for sure that SMU was going to win that game after they came back and tied it. They had all the momentum going into overtime, or if there wasn't overtime. The fact that kid nailed a 50-plus yard field goal, that he's got ice in his veins. What an incredible kick, and that must be one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah, that was an amazing kick. Although I don't know if there's less pressure possibly on a kick like that when you're not necessarily going to get blamed for missing it.
That's true, but I still think because I've played a lot of sports, obviously. Well, not obviously, but I've played a lot of sports, and I know like one of the things I play lately because I'm getting old and my joints aren't as good. I play a lot of disc golf, and there's a lot of pressure. Even if you're just like playing by yourself, you want to hit these shots. So I can imagine he's still got some pressure going into that. But anyway, I don't know what to say about Georgia and Texas. That game was kind of painful to watch at times, and I really don't like what I'm seeing from Quinn Ewers. I just in both games against Georgia, he's just looked pretty bad, and I don't know. I know Sark wants to ride or die with him because he's his guy and all that, and he's kind of committed to him at this point. But I don't know, man. After watching that Georgia Tech game, you'd think that he would have used Manning a little bit more in some packages against Georgia.
Yeah, just used him a few times to run the ball because he's pretty quick and he's got some size to him, and that's his thing. But yeah, I think Oregon looks the best right now. I think they look like the best team. For some reason, I don't have a ton of confidence in them. I was watching that Georgia-Texas game, and for all the mistakes and all the dropped passes, I still just looked at that and felt like I was watching the two best teams, or the two teams that have the best chance of winning the national championship.
Yeah, well, Texas, both the defenses in that game obviously were doing work. What did you think about that hit on what's his name, Gunner
Stockton?
Yeah, what do you think about that hit? Do you think that was targeting?
So I've seen targeting called for less this season than that, but
Right.
I don't necessarily think it's targeting because I'd have to go back to a rule book because they've changed this a few times. Crown of the helmet, forcible contact, and then the criteria changes a little bit if you're defenseless versus if you're not, and he was not. And so I was fine with it, but I've seen targeting called for less.
Right. I gotta say that the fact that he got up, that was one of the worst hits I've seen all year. That was brutal.
Oh, yeah.
But props to that kid. He played his heart out. congrats to Georgia. You know, they won their SEC championship. I mean, I actually thought that they would win because I just didn't have any faith in Texas after the way they played Georgia last time. But Texas played better than I thought they would in some ways.
Yeah.
That game just didn't do a lot for me to like. Yeah, both defenses look great, but man, their offenses, and I get it, it's part of the defense is looking great. But even then, the offense, like Georgia just hasn't looked good on offense for a while. And Texas, I mean, like I said, I'm not a Quinn Ewers fan, so maybe I'm just biased, but he just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, well, I was watching the two games tonight at the same time, so I don't do a good job of trying to watch two games at the same time, although I do all the time. So I would say that the Big Ten probably had 75 to 80% of my attention. And then obviously when they were in commercial or whatever, I was watching SMU and Clemson. But overall, I was most entertained with the SEC game. That was the most entertaining game to me because I didn't know who was going to win. I picked Texas to win, and they should have taken advantage of how dominant they were in the first half. 260 some yards to 50 in the first half. They should have had a huge lead. And of course, they missed two kicks and they should have won the game. So I felt good about my prediction, even though it was technically wrong. I felt Texas outplayed Georgia. But I was the most entertained with that game because it just for me provided the most suspense. I felt as though I didn't give Penn State much of a chance against Oregon. I thought the point spread on that game was going to be 8 or 9 points. I was shocked that it was 3.5. I think that Oregon's decidedly a better team, although it turned into an entertaining game. I never felt like Penn State's going to win this game. And I never felt like SMU's going to. I picked SMU to win the game, and they finally started playing the way I anticipated in the second half, and it was a great comeback. But even when they came back to tie, I just felt like once they hit the field and Clemson started playing from the first couple drives, I thought that they were going to win the game.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this about like you said, Texas outplayed Georgia. I also agree. Georgia got pretty lucky, and that sounds funny from for the fact that they had both of their quarterbacks take ridiculous hits, and obviously Beck is potentially out for the rest of the playoffs, depending on what's going on with his arm. We'll find out more going forward, obviously, but I mean they fumbled several times going into the last part of that game, and were able to recover.
Yeah.
Like it just seems like everything is going Georgia's way, especially in these last two games. I think they got outplayed in the last two games they played against Georgia Tech and against Texas, but they still found a way to win, and that's scary. I'll say that. Like if a team has things going their way and they're good on top of it, that's a recipe for something special. So we'll see, but obviously a lot of that's going to ride on what's going on with Carson Beck's arm. So yeah, my last couple points are I'm proud of Penn State. They played a lot better than I thought they would. That was a fun game. Props to Oregon for winning. In the first year they're in the Big Ten, they win the championship. That's pretty impressive. And then my last point is, SMU. This is the scenario I talked about like a week ago with you. I said if Clemson wins and SMU plays a close game, I think there's no way the committee can keep SMU out because the committee already said they're not really going to punish the conference championship games. And if they were to take SMU out, who's ranked 8th currently, that would set a precedent going forward. Like Brett Lashley, the coach, said, well, why don't I just say my team got COVID? Because then I wouldn't have to play the game and I'd be in. So it's a bad look. Like I think the committee kind of stepped in it earlier by making certain statements. So now this is the chaos I was rooting for. And I know you're in this too. I know you love chaos and want to see the committee squirm. So this is like the nightmare scenario for the committee, because now they have to say, all right, do we have to put Clemson in? Are we going to keep SMU in and keep Alabama, our cash cow, out, one of our cash cows, or do we put Alabama in and kick SMU out? And that's going to piss off a lot of people. So it's going to be really fun to watch what the committee does tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, they only have one head-to-head decision to make in terms of who's going to make the field. They have this decision to make with Arizona State, Clemson, and Boise State, which seems pretty obvious to me. Boise State's going to be the 3, and Arizona State's going to be the 4. But yeah, there will be more chaos in future years. I actually think they got off the hook. I think that they just have one decision to make. And they're going to be, history has shown us that if you look at rankings from previous years, there are going to be years when there is just a glut of teams. And actually there is this year. There's a difference between which teams should be considered and which teams are being considered. Like there should be more of a controversy about Ole Miss and South Carolina at 9-3 and a 10-2 BYU team. And there could be all sorts of other controversies, but because the groupthink, the media, whomever shapes the conversation basically has suppressed all of that to just being Alabama against SMU, then that's what the controversy is down to.
Right. But what I'm saying is I don't think there's really that much else that could have gone wrong to create more chaos than what happened. Like,
Oh,
I mean,
no.
So
But
this is what
go ahead.
I was just going to say. This is what I was hoping for. I was hoping Clemson would win and it would be a close game. Because if Clemson won and they boat raced SMU, I think that would have given the committee the out of saying, well, you know, based on the fact that SMU doesn't really have any good wins and they just got boat raced by Clemson, we're going to kick them out and put Alabama. But now they have to actually look at this and say, shoot, they played them close. They probably should have won or at least gone to overtime. So this is the scenario I was hoping for. Not that I have anything against Bama. I don't have anything against Bama, but I just want to see the committee squirm.
Okay, Rob. Well,
Yep.
I appreciate you calling.
Yep, no problem. Have a good night, Mark.
You too.
Thanks.
Our guy Rob stopping by. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. The link. Thank you to Real MVP for placing the link in the chat again. We appreciate these super chats. Of course, Drew McFly says Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Boise State 3, Arizona State 4. Okay. Texas 5, Notre Dame 6, Ohio State 7, Penn State 8, Tennessee 9, Indiana 10, Clemson 11, SMU 12. Okay. I believe that is what the playoff field should be. Drew McFly, I think, nailed it right there. I can find no fault in that. Again, Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Boise State, Arizona State. We know that the top 3 are set. Those are the teams. And then, of course, Arizona State, the only argument you can make there, but their win was so dominant. You flip the scores between the ACC and the Big 12 championship games, and then you can make a case for Clemson jumping all the way up, defeating the number 8 team in the country by 4 touchdowns. But that didn't happen, obviously. Arizona State, decisive win. Yes, Arizona State, the 4. Texas, based on what I had stated earlier, Drew McFly's right on there with the Texas resume staying at number 5. Notre Dame has a better record than Ohio State. Ohio State has all the talking points against Penn State. I don't see, unless the committee holds completely firm on this. We did not watch the championship games. Just somebody handed us a piece of paper that said this is the team that won each conference championship game. Then why even watch them? Based on the statements they've made about not judging and evaluating the conference championship games, they should come out tomorrow and tell us that they didn't even watch the games. That would be consistent with the stance that they've taken. They should say, we did not even watch the games because we did not want to be influenced by the games. We didn't even see the final scores of the games. We just had somebody tell us who won each game. So we knew what the seeding should be. All right. So then we've got a Penn State, Tennessee first round matchup. That makes all the sense in the world. Indiana stays where they are. Clemson, of course, beat SMU on the field, so they should be one rung higher. And again, SMU went down to the final play of the ACC championship game. And if SMU gets nosed out by Alabama, then SMU can blame Clemson for losing to South Carolina, I guess. That will be the determining factor possibly in all of this. That Clemson could not beat an SEC team lost by 4 touchdowns to Georgia, and also that they lost to South Carolina a week before winning the ACC championship and came within one play of losing their 4th game. Also, keep in mind that the committee is telling us again that these conference championship games, also the other point, the teams that did not play this weekend, their resumes are frozen. Okay. That's also inconsistent with the way they have evaluated these teams all year, with their resumes constantly changing depending on the team's performance on their schedule. Meaning, for example, Alabama's got a win against Georgia. Georgia just won the SEC championship game and just defeated one of the best teams in the country, Texas. Should that not be to Alabama's credit? I would think so. It's part of their resume. Now, it is part of their resume in defeating Georgia that Georgia is the SEC champion and a winner a second time over Texas. Just like Georgia's resume now includes Clemson, who just won the ACC and defeated SMU, although Georgia's resume doesn't matter because they're the 2 seed and they are not an at-large team. All right. But I do think that top 12, I think that thing is spot on. I think that that's what it should be. And again, like Rob was pointing out, the committee is debating right now SMU and Alabama. And I would love to know how much of a debate that is. Fuzzy Ball says this: Boise 3, Arizona State 4, SMU 11, Clemson 12. That's another way to look at it. Clemson's a 10-3 football team. SMU's an 11-2 team. And the conference championship only gets you into the field. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be higher than anybody in your conference. And we're going to see that in the future as well. We're going to see teams win conference championships and still be ranked lower than teams that didn't win conference championships in their own conference. That's going to happen. So I get your point that basically the SMU Clemson game was a complete toss-up. So why drop SMU below Clemson because they had a better season? It's a good point. All right. Then we got Commander Luke. Mark, who would you choose in South Bend, Notre Dame or Alabama? I believe that at their peak, that Alabama is a slightly better team than Notre Dame. When Alabama is playing its best, they are better than Notre Dame. However, I believe that Notre Dame, well, maybe not at their worst. We saw their worst, but that's been a long, long time ago. That generally at their baseline, that Notre Dame's a better team than Alabama. And in South Bend, if they played next week, I'm taking Notre Dame to beat Alabama. I think they are a more buttoned up football team. They're more technically sound, more fundamentally sound. They're just as athletic. I trust their quarterback to at least, again, have a baseline. Jalen Milroe's all over the place. He's like the stock market. And Riley Leonard's going to give me pretty consistent quarterback play. And if Notre Dame and Al Golden, if he's as good a defensive coordinator as I think he is, I think he can game plan against Jalen Milroe. All right. Minnesota Dave showing up tonight. Minnesota Dave, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? What a great bunch of games. I was really surprised on how Arizona State just absolutely destroyed Iowa State. I was like you. I thought this would be the closest game of all the games.
Yeah.
But what is that running back's name? Shaka Boo, Shaka Woo, Scooby Dooby Doo.
Scooby Doo.
All right. Yeah. He's an excellent running back. Excellent. They can make a little bit. They might upset someone in the first round.
They might. I did not consider that until watching them today. And
Same
I
here.
understand it's Iowa State, but Iowa State's a good team. They're a legitimate top 15 to 20 team. And if Arizona State can do that to them, and they just physically beat them up.
Yeah, yeah. And I personally think I'm on the SMU side of everything. I think they're in. I just think that, yeah, they don't have great enough wins, but they don't have horrible losses, unlike Bama.
No, they
You know,
don't.
Bama. Yeah, that's the thing. And they were first place all the way through uh through their um through their conference schedule. So that should mean something, in my opinion. And
Okay.
yeah, since we're gonna go back to Arizona State, how high ranked do you think they would be? I
How
mean, this
high
was a
is
very
Arizona
impressive.
State going to be?
Yeah, because this was very impressive of a win.
Yeah, so this will be interesting because the committee is going to show us their rankings, their final rankings, but then it gets translated into the seeding. So I believe Arizona State's going to have the 4 seed, but they are going to be I think they should be number 10. If I'm thinking about this correctly, because then Clemson would be behind them and also SMU. I would have Arizona State at 10.
Okay, okay. And Boise, would they still be in like 12, or do they get the bye in fourth?
Oh, they're going to get a bye. They're going to be number 3.
Wow. That's who does that help a little bit then like if we saw if the playoffs were out today, and
Well,
no,
we
it'll be
don't
out
know
tomorrow. Well,
exactly. I got to say that this
compared
Drew
to last week,
McFly
let's go
here,
by last week's.
our guy Drew McFly, he drew up the top 12 here, and 11 and 12 might be swapped, but I think everything else is dead on. Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Boise State 3, Arizona State 4, Texas 5, Notre Dame 6, Ohio State 7, Penn State 8, Tennessee 9, Indiana 10, Clemson 11, and SMU 12, unless they honor SMU going to the final play and still having a better record than Clemson. Maybe SMU would be 11 and Clemson 12. But I think Arizona State is going to be either 9 or 10, either behind or in front of Indiana in terms of the rankings. Do you follow me there?
So you think? Yeah, I totally follow you. So you
The
don't
difference
think
between the
Indiana
rankings and the
would?
seedings.
Yeah, you think so? You basically, because Indiana plays in the Big Ten, it just really helps them, even though their strength of schedule is probably the worst
No,
of
no, no,
all of
no.
them.
These are the seedings. Drew is laying out the seedings, but these aren't going to be the rankings.
All right.
The committee's going to lay out the rankings. I hope they tell us what the rankings are, but then those get converted into seedings. So Boise State's not going to be the number 3 ranked team, and neither is Arizona State, but they're going to be elevated into the top 4.
So you think so? It'd be Notre Dame versus Indiana at Notre Dame for the first round.
Based on this, it would be Notre Dame and Clemson.
Oh, okay, okay.
6-11
Oh yeah,
game.
yeah. Okay, yeah, I see. I'm sorry. So it would be Ohio State versus Notre Dame, and Notre Dame going to Ohio State,
No, it's
according to
Ohio
this.
State, Indiana.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 That's what I meant. I got mixed up because they're both Indiana schools.
Yeah. Yeah, Notre Dame would host Clemson, and Ohio State would host Indiana, and Penn State would host Tennessee.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Those last games were just amazing. Just amazing. I have a weird feeling that Oregon's defense is maybe not that good enough to win the national championship. I mean, they have
I
to,
may agree with you. Yes, because Penn
yeah,
State's not putting up those kind of points on anybody.
yeah, and I mean if they get a defense that's way better than what they have played against, they're going to be in a lot of problems. I mean, they struggled with Wisconsin, for crying out loud.
Well, everybody struggles against somebody at some point.
Yeah, well, maybe it's jet lag. That's the only thing I can say about that Wisconsin game for Oregon.
All right, Dave, I got to run through a bunch of calls in 6 minutes.
All right. I will talk to you later, Mark.
Appreciate you being here. All right, everybody gets 50 seconds. Here we go, starting with Sean. Sean, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Mark, I guess I'm in a little bit of a crunch here. First off, the idea that SMU, I just want to make this, SMU has no right to claim that they should get a spot. They played essentially a group of 5 schedule this year. It was very bad. It was the worst in the Power 4. Everyone's crying. I saw the announcers tonight saying, "Oh, if you watch them tonight and don't believe that they should be in the 12-team playoff, I'm sorry, they lost to the number 17 team. How does losing to a number 17 team prove you deserve to be in the 12-team playoff? Is that logical?"
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you to the hilt, but if I'm going to take up SMU's cause, I'm going to say that there are far worse losses out there suffered by college football playoff teams than what SMU suffered. They did have the opportunity to lose to the Pitts and Virginias and Stanfords of the world, and they didn't do it. But Notre Dame did, and Alabama did.
Does anybody else in the league, in the playoff field, say for maybe Boise State, have a worse best win than Louisville? I mean, does anyone like their schedule is
Indiana?
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll give that Indiana's.
So we're letting Indiana in the playoff at 11-1. SMU only went to 11-2 because they had to play a conference championship game that went down to the final play of the game. And I would put up SMU's schedule against Indiana's outside of the obvious that Indiana played Ohio State.
Okay. But also Indiana, if I'm not mistaken, was far more dominant week to week than SMU was.
Were they?
Yes. It's not close.
It's not close. You
SMU was having like 1-2 possession games. We're having 1-2 possession games against mid-level ACC teams.
Sure about that.
Do you realize how dominant Indiana was against their schedule this year?
This is not in any way. This is not in any way me bragging about anything, because this is actually a sickness I have. But I pretty much know every score in the country off the top of my head. But we're going to go through SMU. Yeah. Okay, these are their conference games right here. They beat Florida State by 26. They beat Louisville by a touchdown on the road. They beat Stanford by 30. They beat Duke
in overtime.
That's a 9-3 team that they beat in overtime. They beat Pitt by 23, and they were up in that game 48-11. Beat Boston College by 10. They beat Virginia by 26, and they gave up a touchdown with like 10 seconds left in the game. That was 33-0. They won 38-6 over Cal. I'm not seeing anyone score games besides.
You're cutting off the top of that. How did they do against Nevada?
You talked about it in the ACC. Yeah, if you want to go.
I'll talk about their whole. I'll talk about their whole schedule.
Okay, yeah, they beat Nevada by 5.
Yes.
If you want to go back, and they also have a loss against BYU by 3 points without their starting quarterback playing.
Mm-hmm. And then they also beat a good, not
But
a
and they
mediocre
beat an
TCU team by a
8-4
touchdown.
TCU team. Yeah.
Indiana, until they
Indi-
played Michigan, basically didn't play a fourth quarter
Indiana
the
did
entire
not
season.
beat anyone close to an 8-4 TCU team, an 8-4 Louisville team, a 9-3 Duke team. Yeah, and these games again, they're not close.
That 9-3 Duke team, didn't they go to overtime with Northwestern or something like that this year?
Oh, well, we can. Do you want to get into those kind of
Yes.
comparisons?
No. I really don't. I really don't. But I just like I feel like there people like the whole media is setting this up for like a pity party for SMU if they don't get invited in. And I don't even think it's close who should get in, SMU or Alabama.
Yeah,
and listen,
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but at the same time, I'm just stating that I'm just correcting you on all these close games that SMU played because they really didn't play many close games.
Okay. Well, I didn't say they played a ton of close games, but they didn't dominate like Indiana did.
Yes, they did.
The level of dominance Indiana was like one of the most dominant teams in the country this year in the games they played.
Against losing teams. They were.
Okay. But by the metrics, SMU technically actually played a worse schedule than Indiana did this year.
Sure they did.
So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you if you just assume that SMU would have lost to Ohio State by 3 to 4 scores as well, and you take Ohio State's presence off of Indiana's schedule, I don't know what that does to Indiana's strength of schedule.
It would hurt it quite a bit.
Because at least SMU went out there and scheduled BYU non-conference.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana scheduled no one. Sean, we got to go. Appreciate you being here.
Okay.
All right. Man, we got all these calls and I'm out of time, but I do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I apologize, but actually I don't because I got to go make some money, and that means create some videos. So it was either stay on the live stream or do some videos, and we are going to have to go produce some videos because business calls. So appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We'll be on for the watch party coming up at noon Eastern on Sunday. See you then.